Hello ladies and gentlemen, All Outdoor One here. Welcome to another video. Today we're going to be testing out a series of emergency fire lighters, King of Tinder. Hope you weren't thinking anything naughty. So we'll be testing out quite a few emergency fire lighters, various brands, various manufacturers, and we'll sort of give a little comparison and analysis of how they compare against each other, and talk about their various advantages and disadvantages with regards to several criteria that I'm going to apply. So let's see how it goes. So as we draw to the twilight of our existence, me especially has become to dwell more so upon what I'm putting into my body, going on a little health kick, and obviously trying to reduce all chemicals, etc. Nitrite free bacon, you know, all that kind of stuff, yogurt, yeah. But here's a nice little treat. It's a mixed seed and nut roasted brittle that I make myself. Really tasty and great for a good energy boost. I do put sugar in there, the devil food, but only small amounts, just to help it bind together and also acts as a preservative to keep it crispy for longer. So just gonna have a quick snack of that. Excuse me, I'll get right into the testing in just a second. Another quick interjection. This is my Tad Gear rucksack. It's a small, like 20 something litre capacity. In my mind it's called the Azimuth. I may be wrong. I think it is, yeah. It's an ultralight backpack basically. Been testing it out for a while now. Should have remembered the name really. Apologies. I'll put it in the captions under the video. So the Azimuth backpack, awesome backpack so far, very versatile. And is it worth it? The money that is? Well, I'll give some conclusions on that one on the upcoming video. So as I said, we'll be testing out various tinders today. So we have the fat rope stick tinder, and one that's just fallen on the ground. We have the by the same manufacturer, the fire plugs. We will have some wet fire tinder, Ultimate Survival Technologies. We also have some Esbit cubes, German manufacturer, outdoors fuel source. Next up we have a good old BCB hexamine. Next up we have some digital pocket scales to ensure a scientific analysis of the various fuel types. Excuse me if you're having trouble hearing me over the wind, I'll try and talk up. Next up we have some Mayan fatwood. Next up we have some BCB Dragon fire gel. Next up we have some fire strip roll by Production Hanger 51 again. I'm running out of hands here. Next up we have some Hamero tinder card. And finally we have some homemade good old-fashioned Vaseline and cotton balls as a little what's the word I'm looking for? Isolated test in itself, in other words a controlled test, that's the one. So actually I've decided to go with 1.5 grams, excuse me for the camera work, 1.5 grams of each of the fuel types. 1.6. Okay, let's take a little bit off. And 1.5. No, 1.6. Perfect. So now we'll add that to the lineup, and there we have 1.5 grams of each of those products you see in the background. Mayan fatwood, Esbit in the white and red pot, fat rope fire starter, fire strip roll, BCB International hexamine, BCB International fire dragon, UST ultimate wet fire tinder, sorry, and then finally Hamaro tinder card. Just going to spread the various tinders slightly more apart. They have now been sitting on a slightly damp log for about 10 minutes now, so that's an even better test, as many of them claim to be water resistant, etc. Okay, so we're going to go ahead, start the stopwatch and see what happens. So that's 1.5 grams of each of the various tinders. Starting stopwatch now, and we're using a lighter to set fire to everything, just to get everything going quickly. So that's everything lit within 30 seconds. Sorry you can't see the timer very well. Just had to light the bottom piece of the Hamaro again. So, and unfortunately the Mayan fat wood has gone out. Just relit it now. Well, some of these tinders are a bit stubborn. There's plenty of fuel left on the Mayan, but it's just not catching. Okay, so the fire strip roll was the first to go at about 1 minute 20. BCB Fire Dragon over here has sort of melted off the branch, as I expected. You have to contain it basically, but that is still producing flame at 145. Okay, everything's still burning. Everything else is still burning, should I say. Fat wood just went out, but was relit by the tinder next to it. That's a tricky one, that fat wood. BCB is still just about in the game at 2 minutes 24. Okay, I'm going to say the BCB has had it at 2 minutes 30. BCB Fire Dragon is out. I keep having to relight the fat wood. Okay, looks like the next to go will either be the fat rope stick or the Hamaro tinder card. They look like they don't have much left in them. And the the Hamaro has just gone out at 3 minutes 10, followed by the fat rope a few seconds later, say 3 minutes 15. So I'm now going to call time. Oh no, it's still burning. Okay, well the mine fatwood original is on and off, because it keeps going out. Let's see what else. Yep, the BCB, the US Ultimate Survival Technologies wet fire tinder just went out at about 4 minutes 45. The hexamine just went out at 5 minutes. So now it's down to the homemade one, the fire plug, and the original hexamine. So the fire plug has just gone out now at 5 minutes 40. Although it's still producing heat, it's still a red coal I suppose, which is usable for a little bit longer, but no flame at 5 minutes 40. So it's now down to the homemade and the BCB hexamine. BCB hexamine just went out at 6 minutes 15, and finally waiting for the homemade to go out. Yeah, the mine fatwood keeps going out, and I've just extinguished the homemade one at 6 minutes 47. So that was definitely the longest burning one. So let's think about that, make some conclusions. Well, that was an interesting little experiment there. Okay, it wasn't exactly scientific, but ultimately I used the same amount of each tinder and lit it within seconds of each other. Within 30 seconds, as you saw in the video, everything was lit. So the burn times were interesting. Obviously the winner there was my own, in the middle there in the black container, homemade tinder, which comprised of cotton rope dipped in wax, wrapped in cotton wool, which had a little bit of Vaseline on it. And that burnt for the longest by far. So pound for pound, looks like that gives you the best burn times. Surprising, I thought before starting that the hexamine would do the best, and sure enough it did pretty well. Definitely a reliable emergency fire starter there. But analysing it in terms of burn time isn't the only factor that you need to take into consideration when choosing your ideal emergency fire starter. Obviously there's a degree of how waterproof it is. Ultimately you can sort of overcome this by using a watertight container, which is always a good thing to have in a survival situation anyway. You don't know what you may need to keep safe and dry, and that goes from anything from medication to tinder, so why not invest in a good waterproof container, and that way all tinder becomes waterproof. However, I will say that the wet fire tinder by Ultimate Survival Technologies, I have actually done this experiment at home as they demonstrate on their own websites. You can actually put it in a glass of water and it floats on top, and you can light it and it actually flames for longer due to the water, but will continue to burn for ages even on top of water. So that's pretty good as far as being fireproof. Another factor you may want to take into consideration is how easily it catches a spark. If you're going to be relying on a fire steel to any extent, you want to make sure that it does catch well with a spark. Obviously my homemade tinder, which had cotton wool wrapped on the outside, catches with a spark very well. Equally, I thought the fire plugs in the middle there, these two, when you fluff them up with anything sharp, the fibres revealed are really tiny and catch a spark really well. You will have a bit more trouble trying to get hexamine to light from a spark, unless you crush it up to powder and then the powder flies everywhere in a high wind and then you've lost all your tinder. So that's tricky. I've had that experience before. The BCB alcohol fire dragon, that's interesting, catches with a spark very readily, but obviously you will have to have it in some kind of container, perhaps even the container it comes in, and just the plastic will be consumed into the flame and give you more fuel. The Mayan fatwood, it's good, but it requires preparation. Can catch with a spark if you shave it down fine enough. But like I said, this is an emergency fire starter. I want something that can catch within seconds in an emergency and stays lit pretty much regardless of wind conditions and raining, and if it's raining or not. Obviously you need some skill to cover your fire and make sure that it's protected from the elements as far as possible. The Hammer Tinder card deserves a worthy mention. Good degree of waterproofness there, if that's a word, probably not. And it burns for a long time, and because it's in a compressed format, it's quite easy to store as well. And as you can see, I had it in my own waterproof little bag there, so that's always a good call too. The one that burnt the fastest was the fire strip roll. That's tricky. Obviously, due to the format being in a long strip, it has the biggest surface area, so obviously it was consumed the quickest. However, it did produce, if you look back in the video, a really good big flame. So if you were in relatively good conditions and your tinder was relatively dry, that could still work nicely for you. And it's in a good format on the roll. You can just take out as much as is necessary, and it's quite useful. The Esbit did quite well. That's very similar to hexamine basically, but a slightly different formula by a German company. Still pretty good, burnt well. So I think my least favourite was the Mayan fatwood as an emergency fire starter. Not my favourite. Yeah, for a bushcraft sort of style approach, it can work if you've got patience, and I'm sure it'll be useful with friction fire lighting, not as part of the drill bow set obviously, but just as something to catch an ember or to help propagate the fire from ember. Right, yeah, I think that's everything covered pretty much. So personally, I'll probably either start using the fire plugs. I'm really liking those. You know, there's nothing there to evaporate. Good format, you can store them easily, and they take a spark really well. Second favourite is my homemade, I think. Quite liking that. A little time consuming to make, but you know, it's a good safe bet. So that was my quick guide to the King of Tinder. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, All Outdoor One, and my other channel, Alpha Bushcraft, and check out my website, alphabushcraft.com, based in the UK. So thanks for watching. This is All Outdoor One, signing out for now. Take care.